Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live session. I'm Rita Choi, founder of Asia HRM, and I'm so delighted to have you with us. Today, we are exploring a topic that sits at the heart of modern HR leadership. How do we strengthen well-being and productivity at the same time, sustainably, not reactively? For years, organizations have treated well-being and performance as two separate goals. But in reality, they are deeply connected. When people are well, they perform better, right? And when performance pressure is unmanaged, well-being collapses. HR often get asked to prove the ROI, which is return on investment of well-being. Yet, the tools we are given usually measure everything except human capacity. To help us rethink this challenge, we are joined by a wonderful lady who brings a unique brand of elite performance, science, and organizational insight. Is Yvette Kong, founder and CEO at Ararat, she's also a former Olympian and MIT lecturer. Yvette will introduce a proactive, continuous development approach using the REACT framework, showing us how HR can move from conventional well-being programs to a measurable human performance infrastructure. Thank you all for being here. Before I pass the control to Yvette, I would love to say hi to every one of you. I also love for you to say hello to us and let us know where you are from. And throughout the session, just feel free to put your questions or comments in the comment box. I'm sure that Yvette will be more than happy to answer all the questions. Okay, are you all ready? So without further ado, I would love to pass the control to Yvette. Yvette, the floor is yours. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rita. Thank you for inviting me to this platform. It's very nice to be here. It's a very short session, so let's see what we can do. Like today, I would like to look at AI transformation, but from a slightly different angle. So not the tools, not the latest use case, or another prediction of the future of work. I want to focus on the humans carrying the transformation. Because after all, in the age of machines, humans are still the North Star, right? So I do know that a lot of leaders are being asked to maintain delivery, redesign work, adopt unfamiliar technologies while they manage uncertainty and getting the teams engaged. But oftentimes, organizations do not have all the answers and the changes are coming really fast. So what do we do? So I think the question I want us to explore in the next 30 minutes is like, how do we help people to perform well and stay well while the conditions of work are changing around them? So AI transformation cannot move faster than the human capacity of the leaders carrying it. But before we get into the framework and everything, how about let me briefly explain why why this question matters to me a lot. So Rita has done a wonderful introduction. Thank you. My own route into this question began actually in elite sports. So I represented Hong Kong as an Olympic swimmer, and I experienced firsthand what it is like when performance is pursued without well-being, and how actually like well-being and performance can go hand in hand. Since then, my work has moved across like performance psychology, education, organizational strategy, and I taught at MIT. And today, like through Alex, a venture that I founded, I am exploring how we can make the capacities behind sustainable performance more visible, more developable, and measurable. So with that, actually, let us begin. I've been talking to some HR friends and all that, and I think we have a problem going on. I think HR and people leaders are often placed in the difficult positions. Improve productivity, accelerate AI adoption, protect employee well-being, And then you gotta have to prove return on all three. I mean, in a lot of organizations that we talk to, like these are managed as like separate systems. They're sitting in silos. So performance sits in goals, KPIs, and reviews. AI transformation sits in tools, training, and adoption plans. And then well-being sits in benefits, surveys, and support programs. But here's the problem. I think the person that is actually experiencing all these, they do not divide themselves this way. Actually, it's one integrated experience. And the same leader trying to deliver a transformation is also actually managing pressure, uncertainty, team anxiety, and their own ability to recover and perform well. And so, this is a quick question for the group. Like, I mean, how many of you have been asked to prove the ROI of a well-being initiative? So yes, and this is why I call it a false choice, because the real question is actually not well-being or performance, is well-being and performance, and whether people can continue to perform effectively under sustained uncertainty and change. This is the deepest level in an organization on performance and well-being. It's actually these capacities to live and adapt well. So you may ask, if well-being and performance are connected in real work, the next question is actually why our current system is failing to connect them. So let me skip that here. So and most organizations already have useful pieces of answers here and there. AI trains people tools can do and what policy apply, well-being programs help support recovery, and then maybe performance system evaluate outputs and KPIs and etc. There's tons of workshops, usually one-off, if not like a program. The issue is not that any of these are wrong. Actually, they're possibly very needed. I think the issue is that they often sit in different functions, budgets, and rhythms, and the individual is expected to integrate all of them alone. So what that means is that like AI transformation does not happen during like a single workshop, or like performance or well-being improvement doesn't really happen in a single workshop. It shows up in a new situation every week. A team member worries their role that may disappear. Compliance raises a concern. Senior leadership asks for faster result, etc. So this is why episodic programs often struggle, not only in its effects, but I think also in the way that the effects of it can be measured, quote unquote, the ROI. So these insights may be created in a workshop or a classroom, but the patterns appear later. So in meetings and the decisions, the difficult conversation, or the tough times that leaders are most likely going through and becoming reactive. So what missing actually is continuity. So support that connects from insights to repeated practice inside the real work. So, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about, what organization, what are the important patterns? So important pattern, what are we looking at right now? So because these patterns are rarely measured, how capacities work and etc. Like organizations often notice them only after the consequences have become much more expensive. So if we look at what organizations eventually see, what happens in an organization, we see burnout, we see disengagement, we see like poor adoption, delayed decision, or turnover. But earlier they have been repeated. There could be repeated escalation, avoided conversation, and etc. So what we see, these are not soft signals. Like they have actually like, the cost in well-being is not only productivity, but I think more. So when leaders cannot regulate pressure or adapt intelligently, the decisions slow down, their priorities become unstable, and resistance grows, and the vicious cycles begin. So the cost is not only burnout or well-being, it could be decision drag, rework, stalled adoption, and just leadership capacity lost. And actually, like the two figures that would be helpful to kind of frame the surrounding context is like, on the left, in a BCG study in 2025, only like 5% of them of organizations say they're generating substantial value at scale for AI transformation, like only 5%. So, and then there's another piece of research from Gallup, actually, saying like 70% of the variance in the team's engagement is actually related to management, how people are leading teams and etc. So this doesn't mean that one leader explains every outcome, but it does mean that like leadership behavior has a multiplier effect beyond the individual. So what I'm trying to say here is that these figures do not prove like human capacity is the sole cause of weak AI returns or performance, but they simply remind us that the technological value depends ultimately on the people redesigning the work, making the decision, and bringing others with them. So to make the human side, more concrete, I will show you like a use case, for example. But before that, I just want to pause a bit and to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Yvette. Let's see, we have people saying hi to us.
I'm not sure if I can hear you, Rita.
Can you hear me now? Isn't that okay?
Cannot hear you.
Cannot hear me. Okay, let me adjust my volume. Because I did not do anything with my speaker here. So now can you hear me? Can you?
I
can
still
you hear
cannot
me?
hear, but if there's any question, how about
Oh,
put them
maybe
in the
I will
chat
just put
and
it
I
in the
will
chat
address
box.
that.
Yeah, I will put it in the
And
chat
then
box.
maybe for now, let me go to slide 6.
Okay.
So okay, let's just walk through like an example. So say Maya. Maya is like a regional operations director at a Hong Kong-based financial service company. She's actually tasked to lead the AI-enabled workflow to redesign across Hong Kong, Singapore, and Greater China. So what Maya is experiencing is like senior leadership wants speed, measurable value, and business continuity. Her team wants clarity about how work will change, honest communication, and what remains uncertain, and a voice in implementation. So actually, like Maya is managing a lot, not both emotionally and also workload wise. So as pressure rises, she starts to work long hours. She delays conversation until she can provide complete answers. She becomes more controlling because control feels safer than ambiguity, and she escalates more decision upwards. So the team begins waiting for direction rather than experimenting, and it resulting in relatively low productivity. So what Maya is experiencing actually is she's not failing, but she's still functioning. But the pattern is begin to affect both her well-being and performance. And Maya does not need another AI course or workshop. I think she needs support leading effectively while these answers are still emerging. So this is where a different frame becomes useful. Not personality labels, but looking at human performance patterns. And so this brings me to kind of like sharing a model that we've been developing. So this is a human capacity model called React. It is not a personality model. It is a framework for understanding how leaders respond under pressure, uncertainty, and with the increasing complexity. So there are actually 5 capacities together, and they cover. And over time, we've been developing these with scientists and psychologists, understanding how actually humans perform best. And when I say perform best, it's not just performance; it's actually having well-being and performance hand in hand, thriving, as some would say. So these 5 capacities belong together because they cover 5 distinct leadership functions. On the top, you see how we regulate ourselves, how we choose responsibly, how we move into action, how we bring people with us, and how we see the wider system. So these all 5 things, they interact. It's important to note that these are actually not fixed trait. Like, we're not saying, hey, is Maya resilient? Or we're asking what happens to Maya's judgment, recovery, and flexibility when pressure rises? How can we help them? How can we develop them? So these capacity is not developed simply because someone understands its definition. It develops through repeated practice in situations that require, followed by reflection, feedback, and another attempt. So that brings into the picture of how the framework of understanding human development in a more holistic sense, given the workplace scenario. So let's look at how would this look like in Maya's actual work. So this is what Maya might be going through. For resilience, like the pressure is sustained, decision load, like Maya's pattern is to work longer and sacrifice recovery, because actually we understand that Maya doesn't really know how to recover. And discerning and judging things, like she might need to pause before approving a workflow change and look at what's going on. And all these things that Maya must be experiencing. So the goal is actually not to label Maya. It is to understand where support and practice can create useful growth. So a human is complex. The tasks are complex, but how do we help them continuously, not one-off, to help them build these capacities, those actually they can sustain both their performance and well-being. So to make this more systematic, we actually need to move beyond isolated programs and create a developmental loop. So here we can see how possibly we can help Maya to increase her performance and well-being. And I think for us, it's really about, what would success look like in helping someone to develop new working patterns, new habits, and change. And what we want to see in progress, what we want to see as also a next set of KPI is, for example, greater manageability under pressure, earlier difficult conversations, and all that. You may ask, what would these do to someone's? Well, it's obvious for performance, it helps them, but also for well-being. And it's very interesting because the more that we've seen cases, like well-being is a very holistic matter. It is not siloed into just performance or just resilience alone, but it really works in a network effect of all these capacities working together and having these support more continuously than a one-off program, and that we understand to know how to define them, measure them, develop, and remeasure. So I'm going to pause here again. And I wanted to see if this way I can hear Rita, or I can take some questions in the chat.
Yvette, can you hear me now?
So here's a question. My question is, how can organizations identify early patterns affecting resilience and adaptability at scale before they show up as burnout and disengagement? This is a very, very good question. I think for us, what we often see is that the the biggest burnout, like burnout often becomes visible too late because performance can remain high for a surprisingly long time, and especially for high performers. The earliest signal is actually not recovery disappear. Like people stop detaching from work, they lose thinking space, they become more reactive, and they avoid conversations or compensate by working longer. So the goal should not be like monitoring private behavior or to label them, but I think to look for these organizational patterns such as sustained overload, shrinking recovery time. And one of the actually very real example that we've seen is that that person is very driven and with very high agency, but lacks method or tactics in recovery. So what we've done is that we introduce like micro breaks and like very actionable ways on how to reduce or how to manage work around recovery, and over time how it impacts their performance and well-being.
Thank you, Yvette. Now,
Any
can you
other
hear me?
questions?
Oh, it seems that she can't hear me. Anyway, so I think she'll continue. Yvette, can you hear me?
Oh, sorry, Rita. I still cannot hear you for some reason.
But the
I
other
hope people
audience
can hear, but I
me.
can't hear you.
I can hear
Apologies for
you,
that.
but
I
I
am
don't
not
know why you
ignoring
can't hear me.
But maybe I can see you in the chat.
Okay. Give me 1
So maybe
minute.
I will quickly go through the remainder of my
Okay.
of what I have to share. I know it is lunch break, so
Okay. Sure.
let's do that. So actually, okay. Where we left off is that, how to make this systematic. We mentioned from the beginning that like there's a lot of episodic things going on, one-off, with difficult to track its impact and to measure and define what's going on. So how do we move from beyond isolated program to developing a developmental loop? And what I would actually say it's an infrastructure, a new infrastructure for developing humans in the AI, like in the organizational settings. So yes, a program delivers an experience. Infrastructure creates an ongoing loop of insight, action, and learning. So I think first is to establish a baseline. Not a diagnosis, but a way to identify strains, repeated patterns. And for us, we do it through psychometric testing and different ways of triangulation. The second way is to translate. How do we translate these insights into bounded experiment inside we work? So instead of saying like communicate better, like asking Maya to separate, like let's try to ask Maya, for example, how to separate what is known, unknown, or uninfluenceable in the next team briefing to manage the team's anxiety and etc. So examples like that. So, and then third, we have reflect. So what happened, what shifted. So really understanding how that bounded experience work. We actually call it micro coaching. Like it's like, how do we develop personalized coaching, but micro enough that actually you can use it for day-to-day intervention. For example, micro breaks, how you manage conflicts. These are felt enough because it's personalized, but also actionable enough that like it's in digestible nuggets that you can do day to day. I'm not sure if anyone here heard of the what's that book called? The book on habits. It's really about that little bits every day, but consistently. And actually, that in performance psychology and performance science, that actually is a very key way to upgrading human potential. So just also bringing that here in the work context. Okay, so after reflection, what's next? So adapting, so like understanding the next action, to see, what is her actual experience, like what's next for that person. And I think finally it's for us, like at least for us, like we want to understand how tangibly the changes are over time. So we remeasure and understand, okay, this is how the person is developed at this point, and how do we further help this person to develop? How do we create continuity so that the learning is still there, and the person feels supported? So yeah, that's about how we do. But any system that measures and coaches people succeeds only if trusted boundaries are clear. So actually, the last few slides, here is what changes when development becomes continuous. So I think for the individual, I think there is a space in organization to create personalized support. The more personalized you can get, actually, the more supported and seen the person feel, and the more agency that person will feel. And that also allows development without a label. Because again, we want to be developing and not labeling. But it gives the leader a private space to reflect and practical actions rather than abstract advice. And for XRL, I think it would be beneficial to create a shared language for how we develop humans. What are these capacities that ultimately would drive the success of a company? So providing insights beyond attendance and certification. I mean, these metrics matter, but also asking, okay, what are the deeper metrics that we can understand and really be there for our people, and also understanding cohort level development, not just the individual, and how on a whole, collectively and individually, how the organization is beating. Like, what is the heartbeat of the organization, and what does everyone need, and that needs to be developed. So early insight into developmental needs, not prediction, diagnosis, or surveillance. So the last slide I have here is really, I think, when we talk about ESG, it's we talk a lot about E, but sometimes we talk a lot S in terms of like helping community and etc. I think, but let's not forget about the very people who are driving the organization's future, and making sure that they can perform, adapt, and lead without being depleted, and especially in the age of complexity and uncertainty. I do think HR has the opportunity to move beyond from being seen as mainly the owner of programs to being a true steward of organizational human capacity change. And that doesn't only lead to better performance, but the well-being of our people. It's not about asking less of people, but it's about the building the very needed developmental needs and capacity that would help people meet life and thrive happily and successfully in an organization. I'm gonna just have one last slide, and I'm gonna pause for any questions. I'm happy to stay a bit longer. So the last thing is, I think before you leave, I would be grateful if you fill out this short survey. It's just really asks, where you see the greatest human capacity gap is during this AI transformation, and what's needed. And also, I will leave, one question for discussion, perhaps. Where do you see the greatest gap in a leader's ability to regulate pressure, make sound judgment, and just how, all in all, we're navigating this AI transformation. So I'll leave that to you. I'll check the if there's any questions again. But Rita, I still cannot hear you. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why. But it's
there's
been
a
a pleasure.
question here. Can you see the question on the screen? So technical issues, I don't know why you should not hear me, and so we do have a few questions for you. So let's see. You see, let me
And yes,
text.
and if there's any question beyond the session, you're welcome to just send me an email, and our team can take care of it. But we're very open to chat with anyone, as we are like pioneering on this front on human capacity.
Okay. Can you see the question on the screen, Yvette? Can you see the question there? Okay. How about this one? This question. No? Can you see the question on the screen, Yvette? Still cannot hear me. This is quite a challenge for us, right? Because she cannot hear me.
There's a question. So what is the biggest misconception HR leaders have about linking well-being to productivity, and how does React framework help correct it? Good. Okay. Good question. Let me formulate a bit. I think it's first to shift from programs to infrastructure. So the first change is actually stop treating the programs as the unit of success, but start thinking about and treating the workplace pattern as a unit of change. A bit abstract, but so let me define that. I think a lot of times HR teams often begin which workshop, platform, or benefit should we provide? And I think if we think in the infrastructure mindset, and again, the reason on continuity is like, okay, what patterns are we trying to change? How does it appear in real work, and how should people practice differently on a day-to-day basis? And how do we know that these practices are helping? I think that's very important too, right? Because whatever we invest in, we want to know that it's improving. So I think this changes kind of the mindset of how we see performance development, or even just like talent development, well-being, etc. So that's it. I think all in all is like, how do we stop measuring success by metrics like attendance and satisfaction? And I think the better question would be, okay, what behavior pattern are we trying to change in real work? So, and I think HR has a very unique role in supporting people to practice that behavior, these kind of micro habits that eventually would reinforce not only their performance, but how they feel every day, how they get up and work. And this have a ripple effect, especially for leaders leading teams. It has a ripple effect in productivity.
Very nice. Let me see. Pam has a very good message for Yvette. Yvette, can you see the message? I wonder if you have left your audio on mute. Are you checking? Because you can't hear me.
Hello?
Hello? You can't see the message from Pam?
I can. Now I can hear you. I'm sorry about
that. So good. Thanks, Pam, for the
I feel
message.
like I was speaking into a bit
Now
of a
I can have
now.
very good now. Okay.
I'm so sorry.
God's grace. Okay.
Thank you, Pam, for
saving us, Pam.
For saving us, yes.
Yeah, so I have a few questions for you, Yvette. So now, so good that you can hear me, Let me see. Let me see the question. That is the first one. Okay, this one. What is the biggest misconception HR leaders have about linking well-being to productivity, and how does the REACT framework help connect it?
I think that is a very good question. I think the misconception linking well-being to productivity. I think the biggest misconception is that well-being must prove itself by producing like R&I or rise. Like I think human performance is not linear. Like well-being affects productivity through mechanisms. I think the ability to recover, think clearly, make responsible decisions, act under uncertainty, etc. Context also matters. I think, for example, a resilient employee cannot compensate indefinitely for conflicting priorities, poor management, and unsustainable system. And I think how React helps correct it is the misconception by moving the conversations away from whether people are simply well or unwell. I think that's too simplistic, but towards the patterns that connect well-being to work. So I think the question becomes like, what human capacity is constraining performance here, and what conditions or practices would strengthen it? I think that's more of the misconception that we need to work on. I think like the relationship is not simple. Like, so well-being supports the thing that makes performance possible: clear thinking, good decision, trust, communication, sustained energy. And React just helps HR look at these specific human capacities. So rather than treating well-being and performance again like as separate things, they're actually interlinked. And that is one of the biggest misconception, not just in the organization context, but I would say actually in the world, that so like, for example, mental health and peak human potential are treated separately. But how one is able to regulate their emotions not only diverts from a mental health crisis, but actually also helps to bring that person to their best potential. So that's one very simple illustration.
Yeah, certainly it's linked. It's no longer separate, right? And thanks, Yvette, for telling us how to measure it as well. So here comes another question for Yvette. For HR teams wanting to shift from programs to infrastructure, what is the first internal behavior or mindset they need to change?
I think by what we are measuring, right? For a lot of programs, and programs maybe they can range from, one off one day to a few months and etc. But really, what are we measuring? So are we measuring success by attendance or engagement or satisfaction? Or are we actually looking at the change in behavior and pattern in an individual, and ultimately like as a cohort, like collectively? I would say the latter is probably more tied to the goals of a company, like in performance and productivity. So I think that is the first mindset shift. Where do we find continuity support, and how do we truly measure what really matter?
How can we find continuous support? Okay, the mindset shift flows first. Very, very nice. So let's see if we have other questions. What should change? I think that has been answered. Okay, here comes the last question for Yvette. Any closing remarks for us, or any? If we have only have one takeaway from the session today, what would that be?
I think for a lot of things that I've been through, from elite sports to, I myself have been through corporates. I was in banking and consulting for quite a period of time. And then going from the research side to academia side to see this. I think one of the things that, if there's one key takeaway, is that like, I would oppose the notion of no pain, no gain. I think there is no pain, yes gain. And it's about shifting a paradigm where we can strive from wholeness, like feeling whole and together and well, as a corporate culture. I mean, how many of the population how much of the population are actually in corporates, and actually like how we govern talent and humans within an organization really makes an impact on this world. And I think just having the mentality to understand that, hey, actually, it is truly possible where we can strive from wholeness, and then in plainer terms, like I think have well-being and performance join hands together and recognize that actually the interlink is a very first step to unlocking more and more in your organization. And then secondly, I'm greedy, I have two takeaways. Secondly is really looking at what I was sharing earlier. I think the mindset going from, hey, what are we measuring here? Are we just going for programs, or do we want infrastructure where it is more personalized, so people feel more seen and effective in how we deliver changes, and making it into more of an infrastructure, like the human infrastructure in a company. I think in this age of unprecedented uncertainty and complexity, I think we can go one step ahead before a crisis hit. And that is to proactively looking at, okay, how do we make sure our humans are leading the change and not being led, and how do they regulate themselves in all this. So that's my two biggest takeaway. And I just want to share, Rita, again, sorry for not hearing you earlier.
That's okay.
So sorry about that. I'm not sure what went on. But it's such a pleasure to be able to share on this platform, and I hope anyone here who logged in have had a good time listening to my monologue, since I couldn't hear.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Yvette. Holiness and also mindset shift, right? From program to from focusing on program to infrastructure. Very nice one. Actually, since your background is very unique, right? So would be something related to your background and also the topic for today. And that would be my last question for you today. I promise. Okay.
Okay.
Understand that Yvette is an ex-Olympian. Okay. How does your background link to the topic of the day? Well-being, how to measure, and well-being and productivity is linked. They are not separate. How does it link with your background? Because your background is very unique, and this is my first time having a speaker who was a Olympian for Hong Kong, representing Hong Kong.
Oh, this is this is a fantastic question. Thank you for asking that. And for context, I'm publishing a book, so it's about it's a memoir, and it's about what I went through and why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So, but sharing a little bit here and a little bit of storytelling actually. So I started out as a swimmer, and I when I was 3 years, I started swimming when I was 3, and by 7, I was watching the Sydney Olympic Games, and that was when I was like, I'm gonna make it to the Olympics one day.
Wow.
So I was very determined then, and I started training. So it was like 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 7 times a week, and then twice a day. Before I knew it, I was 13, and I broke my first Hong Kong record. And so everyone was like, she's a swim prodigy, and she will make it to the Beijing Olympics and etc. Bright future. I missed Beijing Olympics by a second, over a 200-meter, and I was quite young, which was fine. The next year, actually, I tried very hard, and I made it to top 25 in the world as a 16-year-old. And then I thought, great. Now I get like U.S. universities like giving me scholarships, and that's how I went to U.S. for school, for college, and I was student athlete there. Actually, I was training with the top program at that time. I was training with like world record holders, like Olympic gold medalists, and I thought, I am for sure going to the London Olympics. And guess what? I missed it by 0.1 second.
Ooh.
Yes, 0.1 second. And so I was really, I broke down. And growing up from Asia, I didn't know how to manage myself. I didn't know how to say that I needed help. And I fell into depression. I fell into really bad depression, and it was tough. But thankfully, I was in the States at the time, and the culture was a bit more open, so I got help, and that was my first pivotal moment. Understanding when I look back, I was so focused on the performance that my well-being was so bad that it would be impossible for me to be my optimal self and performing at my best when I was not happy. It just doesn't make sense. So that was my biggest aha. And I was studying cognitive science. I've always been interested in mental health and brain science and psychology. Um, and so I started therapy and etc. Um, and I soon realized that, there's a saying that the happy swimmer is a fast swimmer. So very cool. And it's actually very true. For the remainder of my college years, I wasn't faster, but at least I was happier. And then when I graduated, I moved to England, to Scotland actually for a new change. And taking the mentality of balancing well-being and performance. I trained in a new environment, new set of coaching, etc. And eventually I made it to the Olympics by 0.1 second. But that whole journey was kind of the seed of what I do now, because I have this very deep conviction that, we don't need to go for excellence at all costs. And there is a place, actually, and I experience it, that well-being and performance truly go hand in hand. And that is how a person flourish. And for me, very grateful that I could get to my childhood dream, and to do that, I wanted to see how I can bring this systematically to people, whether it's in corporates and schools. We're working with schools as well, to start, installing these type of capacities that ultimately would make a person flourish and thrive and well, but while pursuing their dreams. So that's just kind of the deeper motivation of why I do what I do. It's a very long-winded way of answering your question, but thank you for asking that.
Wow, I got some quotes from our wonderful ex-Olympian. Happy swimmer is a fast swimmer. So you can see the power of happiness, right? And also performing at your best when we are not well. We can still perform at our best when we are not well. So thank you so much for a lot of motivations from you. I love your story. I look forward to your mirror, which I'm sure you'll publish it very soon, right? Okay, so thank you so much for the session today, especially to our wonderful speaker today. And this is towards this end of our session. And thank you, Yvette, for sharing your personal story and also the insights about your React framework, and also a lot of motivational quotes you just mentioned. And also thanks you for showing us a new way to think about sustainable performance. What really stands out today for me is sustainability is not abstract. It's about sustaining the humans doing the work measurably and continuously. From HR has a real opportunity to shift from program to infrastructure, right? From program delivery to infrastructure ownership, reactive well-being to proactive capacity building, isolated initiatives to a continuous cycle of assessment, action, and improvement. When well-being and performance are treated as one system, organizations don't have to choose between people and productivity. They strengthen both. Thank you to everyone who joined us today, and I wish you all a meaningful and sustainable week ahead. So thank you, Yvette, again for the wonderful session. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.